When you're doing simple video productions in-house to make more money for your business, you don't need full-blown film school. That's going to be overkill. But you do need some tips and tricks along the way so that you don't look bad. Today I have 4 tips that lots of beginners miss, a little bit about the technology that'll help you look more professional. Hi, Larry Becker here, and this time we're going to look at 4 interesting things to look out for with camera technology when you're first getting into filming your own business videos. I'll explain a little bit about the tech, and then I'll give you a simple solution for each of the 4 problems. Now, the first problem is something called moire pattern interference. Basically, your camera's image sensor is made up of a grid of lots of pixels. And anytime you have 2 grids interfere with one another, think about 2 screens on top of one another, and then they kind of shift a little bit, it actually causes visual interference or moire pattern interference. So what am I talking about with video? Well, since your camera's sensor is already a grid, if it's filming a grid, like a pattern in cloth or something like that, maybe fine stripes or a checkerboard pattern on a shirt or something like that. Fine detail on cloth is a big offender for this. It creates some sort of visual interference. So there are a couple solutions. You can have the person change shirts. That's the easiest way to go most of the time. But the other thing is, if it's just a little bit of moire interference and you're editing on your computer and you're going, oh, this looks terrible, but if it's only a little bit, don't worry about it. And here's why. When you upload your video into YouTube, or really a lot of the online services, it compresses the video, and video compression gets rid of a lot of video detail. It's a double-edged sword. In this case, it's a good thing because that extra detail, that moire pattern interference, kind of goes away. I actually did a whole video all about moire pattern interference, and by the time I uploaded my finished video example up to YouTube, and then you watch the playback, it's really almost kind of hard to see the moire pattern interference. So generally it's not going to be a big problem. It's only going to be a little problem, and a lot of times that goes away with YouTube uploads and video compression. Next thing is have a simple background. You don't want your videos to be distracting. If you've got a person on camera and you're filming outdoors, for example, and there's lots of stuff going on in the background, well, that can be really distracting and people stop watching and paying attention to the person that's on camera. So there are a couple quick solutions. The first one is go to an environment with a simple background. Like my studio, I've got a white wall, that's easy. But another thing that you could do is in your office, do you have a simple environment, like a boardroom that's just really plain boring stuff, no pun intended, not a whole lot of activity or a whole lot of things to look at in the background. It's a good place to go. So a plain, simple background. The other option, if you know photography and if you have some high-end lenses, you would use a wide aperture setting on your lens so that your person on camera is in focus and the background gets blurred out. So wide apertures actually cause something called shallow depth of field. If you don't know what I'm talking about, don't worry about it. Just use your regular old camera and go to a simple environment. Look for a simple environment and film there. Next thing, frame rate versus shutter speed. This is a little complicated, but it doesn't have to be. Now, generally when you're shooting video, it captures video, in the US anyway, our standard is about 30 frames a second, about. It's actually 29.97. So 30 frames a second. What should your camera's shutter speed setting be? Now, in some cases, you don't have the option to set it at all, but some of these high-end DSLRs allow you to set the frame rate, pick the frame rate that you want to use. So I choose 1080p, which is 1920 pixels by 1080 pixels at 30 frames a second. And then my shutter speed I choose is just double whatever that frames per second rate is. So if my frames per second is 30 frames a second on my video, then you double that and you get 1/60th of a second should be my shutter speed. So I set my camera to a 60th of a second. If you do something different than that, then it's possible that your shutter speed and your frame rate could interfere with one another. Again, if your camera doesn't have all these settings, you don't have to worry about it. But if it does have the setting option to change your shutter speed separately from your frame rate, just go for a shutter speed that's double your video capture frame rate. Finally, number 4 is lock your exposure and your white balance. Now, some cameras You can leave them set on auto white balance and auto exposure, and everything will be fine. But some of you, when you look at your videos playing back, and you've got a simple setup, just like me, one person on a simple background, simple light, the light's not changing, the person's not changing, but if I just move around in the frame a little bit, or maybe you move around in your frame a little bit, what happens is the camera tries to compensate for the shifting colors and light that it sees. And you might see a person temporarily shift and look a little bit orange or a little bit blue, or you might see the image get a little bit brighter or a little bit dimmer. And if that kind of stuff happens, all you have to do is look in your camera's manual and figure out how do you lock exposure so that the light doesn't get brighter and darker, and how do you lock white balance. Now, before you lock your exposure and white balance, you should get somebody to stand in the image, stand in the frame of the video, and then get all the camera's automatic settings and then lock it down to whatever the camera sets to automatically. Now for me, if I'm filming and I'm the only person around, what I'll do is I'll bring in a dummy or a stand-in. I'll bring in a shirt on a hanger and something that's about the same color and style of shirt as I'm wearing that day. And then I'll do all my settings based on a shirt that I put like on a little light stand or something here in the frame. And I'll make all my settings based on that. Guys, I hope this has helped you. And if it has, please subscribe. We do tips like this every single weekday. If you have any questions, comments, I absolutely welcome your comments and questions. You can leave them here below the video, but you can also send me direct emails. Just go to larrybecker.tv, that's my website, and there's a contact us form, and that'll send me direct emails. It also is a great place for lots more information, lots more tips and tricks, sample videos. I have some mini classes there and all kinds of other cool stuff at larrybecker.tv. Thanks for watching, thanks for sharing, thanks for subscribing if you did that, and have a great day. We'll see you every weekday right here.